This world where so many things are going contrary to your precepts, we need your help in righting them and bringing them back. Thank you for blessing us. I pray, Lord, that in this room you will empower each person here, each parent here, each teacher here, each one that's interested in education. Lord, empower us. Bring us the knowledge that we need to know. Lord, thank you for this opportunity to be together tonight. I pray especially that you will bless Senator Huffines in all of his many duties, and that your wisdom and grace would go with him. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Okay, and Bill Metzger over here is going to do our pledges. We'll do the Texas and American.
We'll start with American. On this day, if you could keep in your heart and in your mind that we give thanks to all those who've served and are serving, and keep that in your mind as we say the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Texas pledge.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you very much. Do you want to recognize that this is Veterans Day? So a lot of people have a holiday today from work. Do we have any veterans? I'd like to get the veterans, if any veterans here for any of the armed forces, to stand up so we can recognize you and give you a round of applause. Thank you for your service, Marines.
Yes, sir.
All right, great. You gotta love those Marines. Nothing's too big or too tall. I love that. What were you, Roy?
Air Force.
Air Force, great. Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you guys again for the service. All right, we're going to do a little panel discussion. I'm going to be the moderator for education, and I'm going to sit down. I think I'm just going to stay standing. But education, I was blessed to be on education committee, and it wasn't something that I was real familiar with before the session started. As everyone knows, I'm new down there in Austin. But it's been such an exciting ride for me to get to know about education and learn about it. And I mean, it's endless what you can learn. I mean, education is just massive in the state of Texas, and it's massive of all the knowledge we can gain. I am passionate about a lot of things, and I'm opinionated about it. But we had a great session on education last session. There's 11 folks on the Education Committee in the Senate. There are 7 Republicans and that makes 7 Republicans and 4 Democrats. So we have a lot of lively discussions. The Education Committee is it's a tough committee. I would say that. The other committees, I'm on business and commerce, and I'm on transportation, and I'm on administration. But the Education committees last longer than all those others combined. So the meetings are very long. As you guys know, we don't take breaks, and we have testimony. Everybody gets to testify, and everyone's got an opinion on what's the best education. And so the committee hearings do last a long time, up to 12 hours or more. But we had some good bills we passed. I supported last session. Give you a quick rundown on that. Governor Abbott's Senate Bill 925. That's Literacy Achievement Bill. That's K through 3rd grade. Teachers Academy, Senate Bill 972, Reading to Learn Academies for teachers, and Senate Bill 934, Training Academy for K through 3 teachers in mathematics. You also had Senate Bill 935, is Reading Excellence, and that was a teen pilot program whereby reading specialists come to underperforming schools and collaborate with teachers. We also worked on school choice last session. We had a tax credit school choice program that came out of the Senate, it came out of committee, cleared the Senate, and we sent it over to the House. That was where you could get a tax credit from your franchise margins tax up to $100 million, and you could apply that credit, 50% of what you're going to pay in franchise tax, to about 20 to 25 nonprofits, and the nonprofits could offer scholarships. It's a scholarship program for underprivileged children. That did not make it out of committee in the House. So that was the school choice bill that we got done out of the Senate last time. As you know, we've got a lot of charges by the Lieutenant Governor this session, and we're actually I think the Education Committee is going to be meeting coming up here in December, probably December 7th is where it looks like the next Senate Education Committee meeting is going to be, and it was going to be taking up a lot of the interim charges. So, before we get started, I'd like to have a disclaimer that whatever's said up here, we don't all agree with. I'm not necessarily to be held accountable for what I say. They're not, and I'm not accountable to what they say. So, but we're going to do a panel, and the panel, how we're going to do that is, I'm going to introduce the panel here, and then they're going to talk for 10 or 15 minutes about their ideas on school and education in general. And these guys are two complete experts. Let me tell you, they really, really are. And then they want to have Q&A at the end, and I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to ask a lot of questions. I am free game to ask any question, but tonight is a theme on education. This is my 4th town hall on theming, and this one tonight is education. We've done local control, transportation, and I forgot the other one, but anyway, so they're all great. So I know everybody's tired of hearing legislative updates, but that's why I'm doing theme town halls and bringing panels together for everybody in the district to visit with. Okay, Mike Morath on my left right here, and your right. He joins us, and he's representing the Board of Trustees, District 2 for the Dallas Independent School District. For the past decade, Mr. Morath has served as president of Menu Systems, a company that assists child care providers in administrating federal food program for low-income children. This company streamlined that federal program, improved the quality of nutrition offered, and helps feed roughly 1 million children a day throughout the United States. He has a passion for public education, for years an avid reader of information about school reform, and believes firmly that our school system can be changed so that all of our students succeed no matter what their backgrounds. Mike is elected to the Dallas School Board, and has a wealth of knowledge about that, and he's just been appointed to a great committee by the governor. And on my right here is Dr. Matt Ladner. He's a senior advisor of policy and research for the Foundation Excellence in Education. He previously served as vice president of research at the Goldwater Institute. Prior to joining Goldwater, Dr. Ladner was director of state projects at the Alliance for School Choice. Dr. Ladner has written numerous studies on school choice, charter schools, and special education reform. He is a graduate of the great University of Texas in Austin. Welcome. And received both a master's and a PhD in political science from the University of Houston. Great. Okay, I think we'll start over here with the Dallas ISD. So Mike, why don't you go first, and then we'll go with Matthew over here. And so tell us your thoughts on education in general, where you see the Dallas School District going, and what do you think is the solution to some of the issues facing Dallas?
Thank you very much, Senator, for the introduction and the time. I like to begin any discussion of public education in Dallas by talking about some Dallas-specific facts, just because a lot of people aren't aware of it. So in Dallas, we have roughly 160,000 students. We have over 20,000 employees. We're actually the largest employer in the city of Dallas. Our annual expenditures are about $1.9 billion. It is with roughly 227 campuses, a very large school system. The student population demographically, that 160,000 shakedown such that about 90% of those kids are eligible for the free or reduced lunch program. We have in fact 3,500 homeless students roughly, and just to put that in perspective, there are 1,000 school systems in the state of Texas, and fewer than half of them have 3,500 total students. So we have 3,500 homeless students in DISD. The student population is roughly 70% Hispanic, about 23% African American, about 4.5% white, with the remainder in other groupings. How well do those students do? In the aggregate, the students do fairly poorly in DISD. Our graduation rate has been climbing in recent years, but the percentage of students that are prepared to succeed in college is roughly 1 in 10 of those graduates. And to sort of put that in perspective, we have about 8,000 seniors that graduate every year, and we have about 14,000 kindergartners. So there is absolutely some loss along the way. That doesn't mean that the school system is sort of this abstract system of failure, there are a huge number of high points within the system. In fact, the #1 and #2 public high schools in the United States are in Dallas. The Talented and Gifted Academy and the Science and Engineering Magnet. We have in schools sort of all over the Dallas area that sort of accomplish miracles every day. An example that I use, which is not too far from here, is Preston Hollow Elementary, that has a poverty rate about 80%, which doesn't really compute when you think of a school called Preston Hollow Elementary, but a poverty rate about 80%, and yet it has academic performance that is as good as virtually any school in Plano ISD, where they see poverty rates in the 25%. So it is possible for us to see sort of high levels of performance. We just don't see that consistently system-wide. And when I look at the sort of landscape of public education, this is the most complicated endeavor that man is involved in. We're taking these little bundles of energy, these tiny little bundles of energy, and then after 18 years turning them into self-aware members of the Republic. This is not an easy process. The solutions that are involved in improving that system are complicated. And so what I try to do is I try to simplify them, at least in my own mind, and I look at the sort of problem set in 4 major areas. I think of governance, I think of human capital, I think of instruction, and scope. Governance, we're actually going to spend a great deal of time on as an issue tonight, because when you think of most of the school choice reforms that are proposed, they're essentially trying to solve a basic problem in governance, and that is, do the people that are in charge of the system make decisions that are in the best interest of students, or do they make decisions for other reasons? And there are, as an elected official, a lot of reasons that you can consider when you're making policy choices for children that aren't necessarily what's in the best interest of kids, and it happens, unfortunately, with some frequency. But beyond, why you're making the decisions, it's the nature of how and what. Are you, from a standpoint of those that are in charge of making this, are you setting a standard of cultural leadership that focuses on encouraging innovation and risk-taking within your system, or are you sort of just continuing to do the same things over and over and over again? Are you focused on student outcomes above all else, with a willingness to experiment along the way on innovative approaches, or are you delving into the specifics of process, and you want to control process and not outcome? These are major governance concerns, and they're not easily resolved. And this is effectively what I think most of the school choice movement is attempting to resolve. Moving beyond governance, though, let's wave a magic wand and solve this problem and say we're going to make every decision in the best interest of the outcomes of our kids. And we're going to encourage people to take risks to get better outcomes. That still doesn't solve the problem of you have to have a great teacher working with students, and you have to have a great principal in your schools. And this is very difficult in the largest profession in the United States. There are over 3 million teachers. This is not like hiring doctors. There are far fewer doctors than there are teachers. And yet we expect our teachers to operate simultaneously on 20 brains that are not anesthetized, and they're actively running around in the classroom. So how do you recruit talent that is capable of doing one of the most complicated jobs that mankind is faced with? And how do you retain them and help support their growth? And likewise, how do you promote that kind of leadership in your schools? This is the fundamental human capital challenge that we face. Moving into instruction, we have problems of instruction sort of summarized in the areas of what and how. And so when I think of the what of instruction, we have our public school system is standards driven, focused on English, math, science, and social studies. These are important academic subjects, but our lives are far more complicated than that. Think of, can you look a man in the eye and shake his hand and keep your word? Can you pick yourself up after you stumble? Can you look at life with a sense of gratitude, which when you think about it is the absolute opposite of entitlement? Are these kind of skills being supported and nurtured in our kids, or are we focused solely on academic skills? This is the what problem of instruction. And then you have the how problem of instruction, which is if I have a classroom full of 25 kids, and 10 of them are 3 years behind where they need to be, and 5 of them are a year behind where they need to be, and 5 of them are right where I want them to be, how do I actually move them all to the same place at the same time at the end of the year? Logistically, one of the most complicated tasks that we that we're faced with. And so you have to begin to individualize instruction, and you have to do that at scale in a cost-efficient fashion. These are very serious challenges in public ed. And that brings us to the fourth area, the fourth lever, and this is the lever of scope. And this is sort of Maslow's hierarchy. You know, you got to take care of food, clothing, and shelter before you can really reach the hearts. You got to have safety and security before you can do this. And it's things like, you know, can hungry kids learn? Can sick kids learn? Can kids that didn't sleep because they were homeless, can they learn? And the answer to that question is yes. But your system has to be cognizant of addressing these issues related to the broader scope of services that can support children. Just one particular example of this. We've known in the United States since about 1975 that you take, say, a rich kid and a poor kid and you put them in the same class, and they will learn at roughly the same rate of speed throughout the course of that school year. And then 2 months happens called the summer break. And the rich kid sort of continues to learn. They're involved in captivating dinner conversation. They're taking trips to Civil War battlefields. They're in band camp. They're doing all this stuff over the course of the summer. But the poor kid sort of leaves school and they enter this educational desert. And so what happens is, even though we're paying for 9 months worth of education, some of our students are getting 10 and 11 months worth of education, and some of our students actually regress and they're getting effectively 7 months worth of education. Well, if that's the model that you have, and you bake that model in for 13 years, then you guarantee sort of radically different outcomes with different students. So these are the problems of scope of our educational system. None of these levers by themselves, if you pull them, will they solve the... Hello, I'm sorry. None of these problems by themselves will solve the problems of public education. It requires a comprehensive solution. But if you're going to focus on any one of them, you should start at the top, because we live in a world where stuff rolls downhill. And so governance is absolutely the most critical piece of it, which is why I'm such a supporter of so many of the school choice initiatives that exist to try to align the incentives so that the needs of the student take forefront in terms of the consideration. And you see this with some of the structural reforms related to charter schools, and you see this certainly with things related to ESAs, which you'll hear a lot more about shortly, and that will conclude my opening statement.
Okay. Actually, good.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mike. I appreciate that. I was remiss a little bit in setting the table for you. As everyone knows, that education makes up about $35 billion of the state budget. It's the biggest bucket of money we spend. We spend about 75 to 80% of our money in the state of Texas on education, health, and human services. So, and we continue to increase that money for education every session. One thing I want to say real quick too is that all the members of the legislature are committed, 100% committed, that Texas has the best public education system in the world and the country. We just have different ideas how we're going to get there. And that's what we're doing tonight, is explore those different ideas, how to make the best public education system. And the main charge the Lieutenant Governor's presented to the Senate, and the charge that the Speaker of the House has presented to the House, is school choice. So that is the main topic of what we're going to talk about. And right here on my right is the father of the #1 type, the most sweeping, I call it the iPhone 10 on school choice programs, and it is sweeping the country, and he'll go over that in a minute, but Matthew Ladner definitely was the father of that program in Arizona, and now it's gone to Florida, and Matthew will go over that, all the different states that are adopting it. So, Matthew, tell us a little bit about it.
I brought some slides to show you. All I can say is great to be back here in Texas. I'm born and raised here in Texas. I've lived abroad for the last 13 years in a place called Arizona. But I'm glad to be back in the nation of my birth, and God willing, and Mrs. Ladner may come around at some point. Hopefully I'll be back. So this is a slide of my current hometown. This is Phoenix, Arizona. This is not special effects. This island is known by its Arabic term, which is a haboob, right? And a haboob is like this giant weather front. And of course, what catches your eye first is that beige dust cloud that is about to consume downtown Phoenix. Okay, it's really pretty scary when you see one of these, okay? But what you should also notice is, it's kind of a little blurry here, but what's driving that is this massive weather front of these big white gray clouds in the background, okay? And I'd like to use this photograph as a sort of analogy for, I'm going to show you some things that are going to happen here in Texas and how pro-choice will help some of better, okay? The country, and including Texas, is about to go into a profound period of demographic change, and especially age demography, okay? So the bottom line is between now and 2030, every day on average, 10,000 baby boomers will reach retirement age until the year 2030, whereupon all surviving baby boomers will have reached retirement age, okay? And at the same time, many states, including Texas, are also going to have a large increase in their youth population, okay? So let me see if I can figure out how to use this thing here, just like that. So the implications of this are, right, that, well, it's from a state budgetary standpoint, like, it's already the case that we're having some difficulty here in the state of Texas with the students you already have. This is from the 2015 NAEP, and this is showing you the percentage of students scoring proficient or better on reading. Now, let me be very clear that proficient on NAEP is a very high bar, okay? This is a sort of a globally competitive level of proficiency, right? As you see, 50% of Anglo students, 22% of Hispanic students, 17% of African Americans. The real problem here is, I mean, there's plenty of problems here, right? That Hispanic figure is now a big problem, much bigger problem, say, the public school system that I graduated from in 1980, something, right? These are now a majority of the students in the system as a whole, okay? And you've got to get that number up. So, I think I messed up. Let's see if I can get this. I'm technically challenged, so. There we go. This is a photograph from the Austin American Statesman in 2010 from a high school in Round Rock, north of Austin. And this is from a brand new high school. It was built for 2,500 students. It quickly filled up to about 3,000 students. And the brand new high school was surrounded by dozens of portable buildings, and the kids went out and hung this sign which says, "Welcome to Portableville," okay? This is what has been already happening. If you go into the state's data system, you can find out that the debt service and capital outlay from the state of Texas went from about 10.6% of the total spending to over 20% during the recent past. Now, there's no reason to think this is going to stop. Okay, when you look at the Census Bureau projections of both enrollment growth, now what I'm showing you down here on the bottom is under 18. Okay, these are Census Bureau numbers. And up and down is the growth in the elderly population. So it's the growth in the youth population and growth in the elderly population. Now, Texas is a bigger state than average, and these are just raw numbers here. But as you see, when you're adding 100,000 new students a year, which is what the state of Texas has been doing for a long time, and what it will continue to do as far as the eye can see, as far as the demographic projections go out in the Census Bureau, you're going to keep adding students. But what is unprecedented is that at the same time, the population is going to age. Okay, so basically we get this big baby boom population followed by a group like me, who are sometimes called the big bus or Gen X or whatever, right? And then a large youth population. From a state budgetary standpoint, the problem here is it's a conflict between health spending and education that's looking on the horizon. Now, people often use Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare is a federally funded health care program for the elderly, 65 and older, you're eligible for it. The state has absolutely nothing to do with that, okay? What most people don't know is that many elderly people also access Medicaid to pay for health care costs. And on a per beneficiary basis, the elderly are much bigger consumers of Medicaid dollars than average, okay? So as your population ages, your pressure to spend more money on health care increases, okay? These next charts are from the Texas Comptroller's Office, okay? And basically called all other, but there's all kinds of stuff in all other. Your prison system, right? Transportation, universities, a lot of different things that we care about, okay? The blue there is public education and the red is Medicaid, okay? So these projections just go out to 2023, and basically what they're showing is that as Medicaid grows, all other is going to shrink dramatically, okay? If you're curious about why you've been sitting in traffic a lot, it's this, okay? If you've got kids in universities are paying higher tuition than you were expecting, guess what, okay? The state can't charge tuition to inmate prison inmates, okay? And back in 2003, universities deregulated tuition for this very reason. They knew this was coming, okay? By 2023, they actually project that the percentage of the Texas budget going to public education itself is going to shrink. This is the last thing the lawmakers want to do, but it's on the horizon, okay? So, one of the kind of jokes I like to tell about this is that, you know, this Tom Cruise on the top, you know, he has a plan for dealing with the poo-poo, right? And he's got DirecTV. This Tom Cruise down here, he thinks he can just run away from the problem, and he has cable. He has cable. So, how does school choice fit into this? Okay. First of all, let me just say that in any discussion of school choice, it should always be understood that public education is guaranteed by the Texas Constitution. That if we took a poll, we'd find 90-something%, in the high 90s of people support it, and it's not going anywhere. Okay, public education is a permanent feature of public life in the state of Texas, as far as I can tell. Okay, and mostly what we're discussing in sort of an evolutionary way is how do we change the public education system to make it work better for kids, okay? So it's not going away. I mean, you've got 5 million students in the state of Texas, and like I'm telling you, 20 years from now, you're gonna have more than that. There's gonna be more kids, more people working in the public schools 20, 30, 40, 50 years than today, okay? No matter what you do on school choice, okay? But we do have some new school choice programs that are sort of evolving out of older technologies, and this is the iPhone analogy that Senator Huffines used, right? We couldn't have an iPhone unless we had a rotary telephone to sort of have it go. And the iPhone analogy works because if you think about sort of first generation school choice programs, say a school voucher, for instance, it really only did one thing, like a rotary telephone, right? It did this one thing and it allowed you to transfer to a private school or a different public school, right? It did that one thing and did it well, right? The difference with an ESA is that it's actually an account managed by parents, and it has multiple uses, not just going to private schools. So, you know, this is the sort of like, what are these things, right? Literally, they typically are managed in Arizona, where we started these things, as a debit account, right? A debit card. That is how parents use and manage the accounts. And if you look at the things they can spend it on, right, it's a lot of different things. You can pay for private school tuition, but you can also hire certified tutors. You can contract for individual courses at public schools. You can enroll your child in a junior college or actually pay university tuition with it, okay? A lot of special needs students in Arizona are using it for therapists, instructional materials, online courses. Probably the most important one on this list, though, is the third one up there on the top, which is saving for future college expenses, okay? So in Arizona, you can actually take a limited amount of the money, if you have money left over, and put it into a Coverdale savings account, which you can use for future university expenses. Now, the reason this is important kind of goes back to basic economics, okay? And one of the most basic things about economics is you can kind of look at the little 2x2 chart here, and you ask yourself the question, who are you spending money on, and whose money is being spent, okay? So the worst case scenario is when you're spending someone else's money on someone else, okay? When you're spending somebody else's money on someone else, your incentive to economize, to extract the maximum value is very limited, okay? If you move over one square here on the bottom, right, you're spending the money on yourself, but you're spending someone else's money, okay? Let's call that a school voucher, right? Someone else has funded the school voucher, right? You don't economize, but you seek highest value, okay? You actually see examples of this from pre-existing voucher programs, okay? So in Milwaukee, there's a maximum voucher amount of $6,500. Every single private school participating in the Milwaukee voucher program charges $6,500, right? They'd be crazy not to. They're leaving money on the table, okay? What if somebody could create an awesome private school model that charged $5,000 per kid? Never gonna happen, right? Going up the top, this is what we're trying to do with this shift, by shifting from a coupon program to an account program where you have alternate uses for funds, right? The hope is to get up to that top where you're spending your own money on yourself. And that's how you deal with the funds, right? You try to extract maximum value, and you're not just, sort of judging education providers on perceived quality, but also on costs, right? So you're actively given an incentive to consider opportunity costs. So this is one of our first ESA parents in the state of Arizona. We passed the program in 2011. This is a man named Mark Ashton and his son Max. Mark actually runs the Foundation for the Blind in Phoenix, Arizona. And Mark's story with Max is that Max is blind, he enrolled in the ESA program, and Mark enrolled him in what he describes as the best school in Arizona, which is called Brophy Prep. And the way that the accounts are funded is that the state takes 90% of the funds that would have gone to Max's public school, right? Puts them into the account. The account is managed by the parent, okay? He says, so I paid for Brophy Prep, but Max also needed Braille books, right? He also needed voice recognition software, okay? We took the debit card and we bought that stuff for him, okay? He said, after Brophy Prep, and after voice recognition software, and after Braille books, there was still money left over, so we put it in the Coverdale savings account, right? Right now, Max has graduated from Brophy Prep, and he's at Loyola Marymount, and some of the money he spent for his tuition was actually accumulated in the ESA program itself, right? That's a value proposition that's very hard to match, right? And it's basically because Mark was empowered to make the best decisions for his son. So, what are the takeaways on this? I mean, the first thing is when you see those big, elderly and youth numbers and whatnot, and the coming squeeze, I always tell people, it's like, don't panic. I've had people, I've given talks like this before, and they say, oh, that was depressing. Like, no, don't get depressed. Right? You have to plan for this. It's going to happen. And it's something we just have to adapt to it, okay? One of the most important points for me to make is that your middle-aged taxpayers in the year 2030 are sitting in your public schools right now, okay? This is not one of those stories about, someday this asteroid is going to strike, or someday Social Security is going to have solvency product. We're talking about right now, okay? The people in 2030, they're going to have their own kids to educate, they're going to have our retirements to fund, okay? And they're going to be trying to do both of those things at the same time. So the people that have to try to keep the lights on here in Texas in 2030 are sitting in your public schools right now. So we need to make sure right now that they learn how to read, do math, to develop the skills that you talked about as well. This is really important, and it's not something we can put off, right? The faster you can do this, the better. The most important thing of all is that we have to have innovation, okay? There's an old saying that says you never bet against America. Okay, well, I'm sure not going to bet against Texas. Our people before us faced far bigger challenges than this. And basically what we're talking about here is updating the public sector for the 21st century, okay? We need to have innovation in healthcare. We need better results. We need to have innovation in education. And basically what we're looking for here is return on investment, right? A bigger bang for the education buck. One of the ways you can do that is through parental choice. It's not the only way to do it, but it's certainly one you can't do without. The public education system in Texas will never be as good as it could be unless we give parents the ability to choose the best school for their child. So with that, I'll stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Matthew. That's very fascinating. And what we're going to do is ask a few questions. Now, Arizona was the first state to pass the ESA. Is that correct? What year again was that?
2011.
2011. How many states have ESAs, right?
5.
5. And the state that just finished up last spring passing it was Nevada. And they were the first state to go universal. So what does that mean?
So in Nevada, Nevada faces a lot of, and so does Arizona, a lot of the same issues. Crushing level of enrollment growth in Clark County schools in Las Vegas. Just an inability to keep up with enrollment growth. And so there was a comprehensive package of bills that were passed in order to improve public education, one of which was a universal ESA program. So all kids in Nevada who are attending public schools can apply for an ESA. Low-income kids get a larger amount of money. Kids with disabilities get a higher amount of money. But basically, the situation they faced is basically like, do you want to put more kids in the kind of trailers I just showed you here, or do you want to let some of them do something else, right? And the most important thing about this, Senator, is not how many kids are doing it, although I'll tell you there's so far 3,500 applications, so there's no mad rush to the exits and people, depopulating public schools. It never works that way. The most important thing about parental choice programs is to have an exit option, right? When people have an exit option, they don't even have to necessarily use it to benefit from the program.
Great, great. Okay, Mike, what do you think would be something that the legislature could do to help the Dallas School District with school choice and ESAs, or do you feel like there's other options out there that would work? And tell us a little about the district-wide choice programs you're implementing now.
So choice comes in many flavors and many varieties, but I think Dr. Lehner was perfectly accurate that you have to allow parents the ability to choose the best option for their children. And in fact, we're sort of fooling ourselves if we don't say that already happens. It just doesn't happen for all of our parents. It only happens for the parents that can up and move their families. The ones that have financial options already have all the choice in the world. And so in Dallas, what we've done in an attempt to address this is by the year 2020, we're going to open up 35 campuses as open enrollment specialized choice programs. And so we've already launched several of these. There was an elementary Montessori school. It's an open enrollment choice school opened in East Dallas about 3 years ago. The results of these choice programs are phenomenal. The student achievement is substantially above district average, and in most of the choice schools actually way above state average, regardless of the demography of the students that are there. There are ancillary benefits that you don't really think about, so staff retention is substantially higher at our choice schools than it is at our traditional schools. So staff morale is measurably higher at these campuses. When you organize a campus culture around this specific mission, you have parents that are engaged, they specifically have chosen to put their children in this school, it makes a world of difference. And so ideally, that would happen at all of our campuses, but it's a big district, and Rome wasn't built in a day. We have an all-girls K-8 STEAM academy that's opening up. And I say academy, this is an open enrollment school. Anyone can choose to go there. It's not a test-in. You don't have to be the absolute smartest. You simply have to want your child to be in this school, and it can happen. So traditional school systems can radically expand the portfolio of choice options that they have available to parents. One of the big issues that's associated with that, I think the legislature could spend some time on, is the transportation issues that come with that. Because choice without transportation is not choice at all. So the fact that you have, say, perhaps longer distances to bus kids from their house to a school is something that does need to be thought through, the logistics of it and then the costs associated with it. So that's something that I think that the legislature would be wise to consider as the funding formulas related to transportation expenditures.
Okay, and actually some of the states that have adopted ESAs do allow that money to be spent on transportation. And what are some of the lessons learned on ESAs in other states, and how popular is the program with parents, and what were some of the lessons learned between the Democrats and the Republicans in the state legislatures and those kind of battles to get it going?
Yeah. It's been really interesting. Well, first of all, you're absolutely right about transportation. And one of the things that's happened is we have 5 programs in existence now. It's Arizona is the first one, Florida, Mississippi, Tennessee, Nevada. But and one of the other neat things about ESAs is it really is like an iPhone in the sense that if somebody comes up with a new app, you just download it into the program and off you go. So in Nevada, they actually said, hey, you know what? Let's allow them to include transportation as an allowable expense. They decided to put a certain, dollar limit on it, but I mean, just like that, if that's what you need, then that's what you can spend it on. If you don't need it, you don't spend it, right? Another really interesting phenomenon is the bipartisan support. We had a Democrat in Arizona, and Carlisle Bouquet, Democratic state senator, who actually sponsored an expansion of the ESA program to include kids living on Indian reservations, which he represents in his district. He took a lot of heat for that, but he got all the way to the finish line. The governor signed it. In Florida, there's actually the person that administers the person in Florida used to be the program, which is administered by a private nonprofit. He used to be a teacher union president, and one of the reasons that he says he's really attracted to ESAs was exactly the summer fall off phenomenon that he discussed earlier. Okay, and he's a person that's actually adopted a large number of children over the course of his life, mostly low-income children. And he said, one of the things that I like about ESAs is that I want kids to be able to use some of the money in the summer to do some of those things that the rich kids get to do, like maybe get to go to a camp, right? These sort of things. So we're in the process of kind of figuring these things out. There's a big debate to have about funding equity. What should that look like? If low-income kids should get more money, how much more money? How do you make all that work, right? And it's an evolutionary process. But there are actually a lot of people on the left who are attracted to this idea as well. So it's been a very interesting debate to see unfold.
Great. Do you feel like that let me ask you this, that ESAs is the answer for school choice? Obviously, you're a part of the program. Do you feel like that there's other things coming up that we should consider?
Oh yeah, there's lots of other things coming up. I mean, it's my personal favorite, but there are a lot of different fascinating things going on around the country, and I think it was so. For instance, the New Orleans experiment with basically a district which is entirely charter schools now, and showing dramatic academic gains since the hurricane. There's digital learning things going on. There are programs to actually decentralize funding, get it more to the campus level, and give more power to principals that in an open enrollment system has kind of a choice type effect. So I view all of these things going on as a decentralized learning process, right? We're learning stuff along the way, not just in ESAs, but in all kinds of public school choice and digital learning. And no one should be foolish enough to predict how this is all going to turn out. But I will say this, if you want the best system you possibly can get, ultimately having parents consider opportunity costs and cost benefit is better than anything else you're going to wind up doing, in my opinion.
Okay, in summary, the ESAs would be set up and the student would sign up for the program to be in the ESA. And the state legislature is going to determine when we go with this program. I actually submitted the bill last session, so we hope to get it going this session. next section, is so the state has the program, student signs up for the program, and we determine how much money to put in the program. This program is not designed to hurt public schools, public education. I think it's going to help public education, particularly with the funding. We can look at that in conjunction with the funding and the school finance situation we've got going. But so and there's an accountability. There's academic accountability. There's financial accountability to the program. And it's a great system, I think, that going forward that we really need to consider. All right, I want to take questions now from the audience, and you're free to ask me or anybody on the panel. Yes, ma'am.
Homeschool, how would it affect homeschool? Would that be something that could be funded with the taxpayer money?
Great question. Let me set the table real fast on that. We have about 5.5 million kiddos eligible for school-age children in the state of Texas. About 300,000, 250 to 300,000 are homeschooled. Another 250,000 are in public schools. About 5 million private schools, and about 5 million are in public schools. Okay, how do they handle the homeschoolers in Arizona?
So, in Arizona, we have a legal, and it's been around for a long time, there is a legal definition of what homeschooling is, okay? When we crafted the ESA bill, we made it legally distinct from homeschooling. So formally, on a legal basis, you're either an ESA student, but you can't be an ESA student and a homeschool student at the same time. Now, that's legally, and that's because that's the way the homeschooling community wanted it to be. There's a large number of homeschooling parents who want nothing to do with state funding. They don't want to have anything to do with it, and they feel very strongly about that. And the last thing I would ever want to do is mess up homeschooling. Having said that, the allowable uses under the ESA program include things like hiring private tutors, buying curriculum, doing online programs, and we do have students that if you walked in their house and watched their day would look a lot like a homeschooling student. Legally, they're distinct. They're distinct because they need to be distinct, and that's fine. But as a practical matter, yes, some homeschooling students engage a group of education vendors that are similar to the ways some homeschool students get educated.
But that's also because they have academic accountability if they're in the ESA program.
Right. Well, it varies by state. In Nevada, you're going to have to take a national norm reference test, like Iowa Test of Basic Skills or Stanford 10. That was not a part of the Arizona program because it started only the first group of students that were eligible were special needs kids, and obviously there's some special issues about testing in that community. But in Nevada, which is going to be the biggest program, there's going to be a requirement that you take a national norm reference test, and so I would expect that generally to be the case around the country going forward.
Great question. Yes, sir.
Just, even though my wife's a teacher, let me ask you a dumb question here, okay? What's your take or flavor about the possibility of this new legislation in Texas, adopting some form of one of these options from the standpoint of the teachers and their unions? And do you have a flavor for that? Whether the teaching community thinks this is great or bad, or
The school choice program, the ESA?
the ESA, all the different options we talked about now.
Well, they're generally not in favor of it. They're generally not. They're going to push back against it. But we have some teachers that are in favor of it, and I think they should study it more because it presents them a lot more opportunities. Whether it's charter schools, school choice presents the faculty a lot more opportunities for employment and wage gain, to compete in the market. What we really need is competition. Competition, I've always gone around and said this, made America great. It lowers the price, increases the quality of everything it touches, and it's going to do the same thing for education. So a lot of the legitimate fears and illegitimate fears of fear-mongering that this is going to really harm public ed, and we've got to really support public ed, is unfounded. I think you're going to see this come about, and I think you're going to see people really embracing it. They're going to be totally surprised and shocked at how wonderful the system can really work with competition and what it does and raises the bar for everyone. And that's what we need. Monopolies are bad, and government monopolies are the worst monopoly, right? So we don't need any more government monopolies. We need a free market to work, and the free market is going to train up, what works and what doesn't, and that's kind of what this is all about. Sure.
I was just going to say, so the choice experiment that's sort of most robustly studied is the one that's been in existence in Florida for a while. And the results from that are that so again, a relatively small number of students exercise the option to leave their public school and go to some other environment. The students who left ended up performing better, but the schools that they left also ended up performing better. And this is something that sort of no one was, well, I wouldn't say no one was expecting. The people who designed this program were in fact expecting that. But all the critics of these kinds of initiatives say, well, it's just your best kids that are leaving, and then it's going to drag down the quality of what's remaining. And that, in fact, the opposite has been true. The response of the public school bureaucracy has been pretty substantial in terms of the improvements that they executed operationally, and the aggregate performance of those campuses has improved. So it's both the kids that exercise the option and the campuses that are affected by the exercise of the option. Both of those see performance gains. It's pretty remarkable.
Good. Yes, ma'am.
What will have you looked at the impact of if ESCA, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, is reauthorized and it mandates, if it passed, it's already passed the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate, it's in committee, conference committee, it'll be over 2,000-page bill. And in that, it mandates a shift to the affective domain. And choice is really no choice if, when the money follows the child, the Common Core philosophy of education, the shift away from academics to attitudes, values, beliefs, and behaviors will be mandated. And the fact that when the money follows the child, so will the data collection of our children to be basically monitored by the state and federal government.
I'm not personally familiar with that yet. I'm sure we'll be seeing it as soon as he gets out of there, gets out of Washington. But okay, Matthew's going to take a stab at that. He's had experience, and I know that was going to be some questions this evening about the federal impact, the federal funding impact on school choice.
This is actually why a lot of us, including me, have a line in the sand on testing. And I think the two things that you're trying to balance in a school choice program is, on the one hand, you absolutely need to preserve the autonomy of the private school sector, right? The whole idea behind this is to increase, parental options, right? So the worst thing that could possibly happen would be to homogenize private options, right? The other thing you're trying to balance in this is a legitimate interest on the part of the public to know that these kids are learning something, right? And the sort of sweet spot on this is that more than 90% of private schools, for instance, already give a national reference test, like the Iowa Test of Basic Skills or the Stanford 10 or Terra Nova or a group of other ones. So the line in the sand for me and for a lot of people is that we will never accept a requirement that requires kids to take the state test, whether that's the state of Texas test or a Common Core test in another state or any of that kind of stuff, because that winds up influencing the curriculum of the private options. Okay, so I think that we can have a system, and we've pulled this off in private choice programs around the country, a private system that does have data that people can examine, that can feel confident in, but which does not dictate curriculum to the private school providers, and you hit a good balance. So one just sort of horror story about this actually comes from our neighbor, your neighbor, Louisiana. They had a very heavy-handed school voucher program with a lot of regulation to it, including a requirement to take the state test. And as a result of that, 70% of the private schools in Louisiana have chosen not to participate. And so it's a huge backfire, right? The program in Louisiana was actually designed for low-income kids going to C, D, and F rated schools in the state of Louisiana. And because of the heavy-handedness of the state, the best private schools in Louisiana have taken a pass. No thanks, we don't want to participate, right? So, you know, there is a sweet spot there, but, you know, it's very important, you know, the way I put it for people in Arizona is that if what you want is our test, it's called AZ Merit, it's basically a Common Core test. If that's what you want, then I've got 3,700 different options for you in the state of Arizona. They're called district and charter schools. If that's what you want, go get it, it's out there. If you want something else, that's what private choice is for, and or homeschooling, right, which I want to reserve, so.
But what if ESCA passes and that's mandated from the federal government?
If the federal government does what you're saying, I mean, this does not have to influence, the fact, basically, it would increase the incentive for us to create opt-outs for parents that want them, right?
But I don't think any federal money would be going to these ESA accounts, and as a result, the rules that come with the federal money wouldn't apply either. But I might be mistaken, but that's.
That's what it's
Yeah.
state, and not
So-
local money, yeah.
And so, but I think that the point that he made on testing is a pretty critical one, because even if you don't accept federal money, if you have these sort of insidious incentives that align with those other federal requirements, even though you're not formally embracing the federal requirements, you can see that creep up in it. And that's the reason why you would draw the line in the sand. You can't allow assessments that are, say, tied to ESEA. You cannot allow those kinds of assessments to be a requirement in the educational savings account program. Otherwise you essentially allow a back door for that. So it's just, I think policymakers need to be careful about that as they're crafting this to ensure that we're adequately sort of firewalled from that.
And even in like Dallas ISD, where 90% are those Title I schools, how do you, or 100%, how do you get those schools not to take the money?
Well, that's a very sticky conversation for Dallas ISD because it's $150 million a year. So you either turn down $150 million a year or you do what the Fed said. Now, I'm not an expert on ESEA either, so I don't know what the full implications of this are if it passes. I know that the state of Texas has banned the application of Common Core in schools in Texas, but if you're buying curriculum on the open market, a lot of that curriculum is aligned to Common Core anyway. So it's just something you have to be sort of vigilant about, and it's very difficult.
Okay. Bill, got a question?
Yes, in 2006, the Texas Association of School Administrators released their vision, which they call the Reform of Public Education in Texas. And over the years, hundreds of school districts in Texas have adopted that vision. I live in a large school district in urban DFW, and they adopted the vision in 2001. And that vision includes all kinds of Common Core kind of stuff, 21st century learning, project-based learning, focus on technology rather than academics, and so on. The downside of that is coincidence with the implementation of those things. Student performance has declined significantly in the district. From 2014 to 2015, 15 of the STAR test scores have declined, one is unchanged. The SAT scores are down across the board. In 2012, the sixth grades measured, the kids were all reading above the Texas state average. In 2015, 4 of those sixth grades are now reading below the Texas state average. My question is, how do you balance these untried, unproven, progressive teaching strategies with the traditional teaching strategies that have held us and done so well over the years.
I can tell you the way this is playing out in Arizona, all these issues are also present in Arizona. When you give parents the ability to choose, and Arizona has more kids going to charter schools than any other state as a percentage of the population, the schools that they're flocking to, and the schools with huge waiting lists because parents are like beating down the doors trying to get in. One of our, and they've actually opened a school in San Antonio, they're going to Houston, and I think, they're already here in Dallas, called Great Arts Academy.
They're here in Senate District 16.
There you go. And 2 of the 3 Latin children go to a great art school. It is uniforms, great books, back to basics, strict discipline. I tell you, these things, they sell like hotcakes. People want them so badly. Basis is another one. They're also in San Antonio now. You know, really hardcore math and science, you know, world-class results. So when you give parents the ability to choose, so what I think what you're describing here is that somebody in the district decided this is the best education, so we're going to impose it on everyone, right?
That's exactly what.
Yes, that's exactly the opposite of what we need to be doing. What we need to be doing is let people have genuine diversity in what they want out of education and the approaches they want to take. But when you let parents choose, they gravitate towards what are proven, they see success, they talk to their friends, right? And they choose the types of schools that you're describing.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
So this problem of centralization in school systems is pretty extraordinary, because what you have described is essentially an individual employee or a series of employees that have oversight over a whole bunch of campuses, pushing down their specific change to all those campuses, regardless of the possible outcomes of those changes. And so we've seen this. I've seen it in Dallas for a long time, and there's a lot of research behind, say, the teaching of core knowledge as opposed to a more touchy-feely, progressive view of absorbing material somehow through the ether. And this back to basics approach is simply vastly more effective, especially for low-income kids. And yet there's so many districts that central curriculum specialists sort of push down an opposite approach, which is the reason why the kind of choice initiative that Dallas is embarking upon now, and this sort of more pure display of choice is so critical. You've got to remove central bureaucracies from the decision-making processes that happen at campuses, whether those are campuses or private schools or charter schools or schools that are operated by under the umbrella of a school system. And because if you don't do that, you sort of creep into this least common denominator approach to the educational system, and it just isn't working. It patently is simply not working. And there are ways for us to move aggressively in that direction. There's an item of state policy that's somewhat relevant to this. There's an approach to school district budgeting where if you do budget centrally versus budget at a campus level. And there's a state law that only applies to Houston that if they do budgeting at the campus level, they're free of state procurement requirements. And so Houston Independent School District has this incentive to push all these budgeting decisions down to the campus level, but it only applies to Houston. So we need to get that law sort of more broadly implemented in the state of Texas to encourage school system decentralization.
We really just need to get the power to the parents, and that's what school choice is about. Power to the parents and empower the students. Yes, ma'am.
Julie Lynn, and I've had the opportunity to work with each of you gentlemen through Texans for Education Reform on policy at the local and state level. So first of all, I just wanted to commend each gentleman. Senator Huffines came to the Senate as a new member, understood philosophically the challenges that exist for education in Texas, and really dug into the policy side of it, and was an outstanding member on the Senate Education Committee. So thank you for that. Mike Morath is, in my opinion, the most innovative school board leader in Texas. I haven't met anyone as obsessed with academic achievement of students as Mike, and that's great. And Dr. Ladner has been really impactful in Texas, but nationally as well. So thank you for that. So Dr. Ladner, I didn't know that your children were with Great Hearts, so I recently transitioned to Great Hearts to expand this classical liberal arts charter school across Texas. I think it's charter school, public school choice. Charter schools are such a great choice option for families within the public school system, and I think something that we focused on from the policy perspective. And Senator Huffines, I just wanted to know, I know last session you supported equitable funding for charter schools. They're funded about $1,000 less than, students are funded about $1,000 less than traditional district students because of facilities funding. So last session you supported facilities funding, and I just wanted to know if you saw an opportunity for that to come up again in 2017 with the support we need to pass it.
Well, if it doesn't, I'll bring it up myself. I wasn't sponsoring that last time, but you can count on me bringing that up if no one else does. I think charter schools are really shortchanged. I think, look, they have to take all comers. Charter schools do. A lot of public people don't realize. You don't really, public school people go out and talk about that they don't, but they do. They take all comers to come up and sign up. Great Heart Kids. How many's on the waiting list for?
Yeah, so Great Hearts, again, a classical liberal arts public school. Such an amazing model because this is a kind of education offering that used to only be available to parents who could afford private prep schools. So in Arizona, there's 11,000 students in Great Hearts schools in the greater Phoenix area with 13,000 students on the wait list. In Texas, between San Antonio and Irving, we have 2,000 students in our schools with about 4,000 students on the wait list. So we intend to expand in North Texas, and we just need that equitable funding from the state to take down
We're
that
going to
barrier.
work on that, and I think DISD right here has a few empty campuses that they get this for $1 a year. They certainly aren't using them. They're collecting dust, as do most ISDs. They have a lot of unused facilities. As you know, charter schools have to locate in old grocery stores, churches, wherever they can cobble together the facilities. They have very little sports team programs. They don't have any of the extracurricular activities that public schools have. They don't have the facilities, but they still have 2 times their enrollment on a wait list. So we have a real need for charter schools, and we got to help them get the facilities. So I'm going to work on that. Yes, sir.
With all the talk that's been talked about tonight, it's a great idea, but until it becomes policy, it's just an idea. We have elections coming up soon, filing begins pretty soon. Where is the House leadership and the Senate leadership on these plans? And what can citizens do to get involved, to make it from an idea to policy?
Great question. I love that. I can tell you that the Republican Party, this is a party platform issue. It's something that the party's been united at in theory for a long time. And the Lieutenant Governor is certainly a huge believer in school choice. The Governor is a believer in school choice. And the Speaker is a new believer in school choice. He put it out he just put it out on the air and study that he wants to consider school choice. So I think that we've got this. Yeah, we'll take all comers, and I think right now maybe the stars are lining up. I mean, I really do believe that. The education chairman on the House side, Representative Aycock, is not there anymore. He's retired. So there's definitely going to be a new chairman in education, and so that's going to be better than what we, for school choice than what we had, because he was not forced for school choice. I think what you can do, you can contact your representative. You don't need to contact me. I'm already bored. You can contact, I would say the pressure is going to be, contact the members of the education committee. Everything's about the committee. Contact them, make sure it gets out of the committee. Contact the chair of the committee, who's ever on the Senate side is Senator Larry Taylor. And on the House side, they don't know yet. But contact those committees and contact your statewide guys, which would be the governor, let him know you're supporting it, and I'd throw a letter out there to the speaker.
Sure.
I don't think it hurts. Or call him. And really, let me tell you, as a member, we really care about what the people think. There's a lot of special interest groups that come in, but we really want to hear from the people. That means a lot more. I mean, it's got a multiple of 5 to 10. If people come down, or citizens come down there and say, this is what we want, we can hear stories, we can hear testimonial that this is why we need it, this is what's gonna work for me and my family, I think that everybody listens to that a whole lot more than we listen to the same folks that walk in and out of every committee hearing, and we know their agenda. So, that's just my opinion. Yes, ma'am?
I have a question. So you said in Louisiana that there were certain private schools that did not want to participate in this. In Arizona, did you find the same?
No.
Okay, and what about Texas? What if a private school does not want to participate in
It
this?
is always the option of private schools whether to participate or not.
Okay.
And I'll tell you that we have the first scholarship tax credit program in the country in Arizona, so we invented 2 different types of school choice. That one happened way before I was still in Texas, but it is a very light regulatory touch, and approximately 100% of the private schools participate. Okay. So the ranging variation is 30% Louisiana, 100% Arizona, so it depends on the details of the bill. There's a lot of people who are going to say, wow, we've got to regulate our way to make sure these private schools are high quality. But be careful with that because there is a cost to it. And the more regulation you put in, the more private schools are going to look at it and go, nah, I don't want to get mixed up in this. You want to find the right balance.
The real accountability is with the parent. I mean, that's where the accountability rests, and that's what this program is all about. When the parent says, the parent makes the call. The parent can fire the school, leave the school, so that's what we want. The accountability is with the parent. Has somebody had asked a question? Who hasn't got a question? Yes, ma'am, back there at the camera.
Hi, I'm from Richardson ISD, and I've met you before. You spoke at the Richardson Library. I have 3 children with learning disabilities, and very smart children, very able. We're not low income. We can't get the services we need from the district. There seems to be a holdup, and can't seem to get anywhere with it. It's very political, and a lot of people are hurting, thousands of children. And that what Mr. Ames spoke of, the reason all those scores are going down, and probably DISD too, is we're not teaching our kids how to read. And we have a lot of kids that have dyslexia that are just being, not given services. I've requested documents. It is true, it is sad, and it's ongoing. And for 7 years, they're saying, we're working on it, hang in there.
That's a nightmare is what that is. And I feel your pain. I'm serious about that. It's horrible. The same testimonial could be had by the thousands and tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands across the state of Texas. And that's why school choice is so important, to give you the option to use your money. And after all, it's your tax dollars. It doesn't belong to the government. It belongs to you. And that's what we're going to work on to make sure it gets into your kiddos' accounts and you can use it with
So until that happens, what are you going to do as a senator to the school districts? Like, what can you do to help us? It's been going on for a long time. I mean, but what can we do together to get that?
In your specific case, let me talk to my team, and we'll come by. If you could come by and meet with me, and let's go out and talk to the superintendent.
I present a lot of parents and a lot of students, and a lot of African American students that are invisible.
Okay.
Big problems. And I have the numbers, I have documents, and it's a big deal, and we're going down, and they want to cover it up. And
I want to tell you that the Arizona ESA program actually started exclusively as a special needs program. And it grew out of the first voucher program exclusively for special needs children passed in Florida in 1999, went statewide in 2001. No one has more to benefit from a program like this than special needs children. Every child has unique needs and strengths and whatnot, but no one can benefit as much from the diversity of options and approaches that you could take as special needs children. It is already the case nationwide that 2% of special needs children are going to private school at district expense. That is sometimes as a part of a consensual agreement between districts and whatnot, but it's often the result of a lawsuit or the threat of a lawsuit. Okay, but the way this works out in practice is that These attorneys that know how to navigate this are few and far between. They're very expensive. So basically what we have right now in this country is school choice for rich kids with disabilities, but not for everyone else. Okay? Now, the school districts have told us for the last, since IDEA's first incarnation in 1975, they consistently told us that they don't get enough money for special needs children. Okay? When the state, you people don't give us enough money, the federal government doesn't give us enough money, we're transferring money out of general ed into special education. This is a terrible financial burden. You've heard this several times.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, okay. So here's the thing. When the state turns around and says, we're going to let you walk away with this money that you claim is inadequate, the money that you claim you're having to supplement from general ed, how can you complain about that, right? Either you weren't telling us the truth the last 40 years, right, or you're not telling us the truth now, right? Because and this is actually how it works in practice. When these children leave, they can continue to do the transfer from general ed into special ed if they want to and spend more money on their special ed kids that are still there. Or they can keep a little bit more of it back in general ed. Either way, they win, and the big winners are the kids, okay? The kids win big when they have choice options. And this busts one of the biggest myths about school choice, which has always been, oh, the private schools only want to pick the easy kids, and blah, 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 blah. There are 30-something thousand children in the state of Florida right now going to private schools through the McKay Scholarship Program, okay? There's almost 1,000 private schools that are serving their needs, okay? With children with disabilities, yes, okay? So it's a win-win. Everyone wins. The school district wins, the kids win, the parents. There's no need to sue, any of that kind of stuff. It just couldn't be a better situation for special needs kids.
This is a reason why I'm such an advocate for these sort of choice initiatives. I serve on the board of a large school system. We're a large employer, we're a large business. What we do is we try to provide services for our customers, but very clearly we're not providing services effectively to all of our customers. And if we structure the system such that the only option that is available is the supply-driven, supply-side, sort of state-sponsored option with no choices, then you never sort of put the consumer first. Our traditional model is a producer comes first, not a consumer. And this is the reason why this kind of reform is so critical. That doesn't mean that I, as a school board member, am not going to do everything that I can to try to improve the quality of services that we offer through our operations. But I simply recognize that it's impossible for us to do it effectively at the scale that we've been operating with the geographic monopoly that we have. And if we're going to have a system that truly educates all children, we need to make sure that we sort of grow these other choice options to give folks lifelines. And as a result, our bureaucracy will slowly but surely become more consumer-driven rather than producer-driven.
Okay. I want to try to get everybody out on time. We'll be here after this meeting for a while to answer questions, but I'll take one more for the panel. Yes, sir.
Thank you to the esteemed panel and also Senator Hancock for sharing with us so much information, opening our eyes to a lot of the things going on at state level and national level. One of the things I like to mention is the amount of homeless kids in Dallas Independent School District, those that we know of, those that we don't know of too. So I know it's hard to keep track of the numbers, but how does ESA and school choice impact the homeless kids and allow them to also attain the quality of education?
Well, it's probably a two-part question, so I'll, okay. Matthew here?
You know, there's no doubt that is a tough one, okay? I mean, and I'm going to be just completely upfront with you and say that although I am absolutely certain that the sort of parent-driven system that we're talking about does produce general improvements in the quality of education for even the kids that don't participate, okay? And it does, and there's plenty of evidence I can give you on that. Now, but what I'm not going to tell you is that ESA solves every problem and fixes everything, and, you know, because there's a lot of other stuff we have to do as well. I do know that there are charter schools in Arizona that focus on homeless children, you know, the specific programs to try to meet their needs and whatnot. I can't say that it's a perfect solution though, but it is an earnest attempt to do, to improve things, right? But it's not, it doesn't have magical properties, but it is helpful.
I would echo that. I want to say that ESAs are not the solution to everything. This isn't the secret formula, recipe that's going to solve everything. But this is one step in the right direction. And as we go forward with this step, we'll find other things that are going to work. And there's all kinds of great ideas out there. We have to be open to seeing beyond the obvious, to being creative. We can't sit back in an education program that's basically locked into the 19th century. So that's what we're about, and that's what this panel's about, and that's what we're going to keep driving forward in the Texas Senate, is new ideas being innovative and creative. So thank you very much. Let's give it up for this panel right here. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you so much. I really, really do appreciate your interest in education and your interest in what's making Texas better. If there's not a problem, if there's a problem and I don't know about it, I can't help you, I can't fix it. So please tell me about anything.